I just want to let you know that this section will be recorded and shared with the students who are not be able to attend this time, and we will have a Q&A section towards the end. So please come up with any questions. And here is the agenda for today. We will start with a brief introduction, then each speaker will share their background and career journey, then MIIS, and after that, we'll move into our Q&A section. And all right, let's start. So we are truly grateful to have four outstanding alumni with us today. The first, we have Cole, the principal consultant at Blue CSR Strategies, and he got an MBA and IEP joint degree at MIIS. And next, we have Ivy from the Clean Food Standard Lead at the Washington State Department of Ecology, and she's an AEP alumni. And we also have joined by Erin, Director of Strategy Learning Experience at Destinations International. And she got an MBA and an IPD degree at MIIS. And finally, we have Nicole. Nicole works on sustainability in supply chains and operations, and he's the Director of Supply Chain Operations Sustainability at Manpower. So all of our speakers are MIIS 19th graduates. So thank you all again for being here today. And let's start with 3 to 5 minutes for each speaker on your journey at MIIS. So yeah. Nico, would you like to begin?
I was the last one on the slide. I feel like we should go ladies first here.
Okay.
Erin is always great at kicking off and getting the energy up. So
So shocked that Nico doesn't want to go first. I'll be happy to go first. We've been having this dance ever since graduate school and it never stops.
We also
Hello,
all graduated the same year too, which is funny.
Well, thank you for the introduction. As she said, my name is Erin Witt, and I am the Director of Strategic Learning Experiences at Destinations International. So we are the leading trade association for destination marketing organizations. So these are like your local Visit Monterey or the Las Vegas Visitors and Convention Bureau, the people whose job it is to get visitors to certain destinations. And I essentially plan their conferences and hire keynote speakers and kind of run the content throughout all of our in-person events. Since MIIS, I finished my, I don't even know what you called it, practicum, I guess, in Malaysia. I was in Malaysian Borneo at an eco lodge called the Sukau Rainforest Lodge. And that's kind of where I did the role of consultant in ecotourism and eco lodges. From there, I led gap year trips with Thinking Beyond Borders. Couldn't remember their name. And I took college kids around the world for about 7 months, teaching them about sustainable agriculture, education, and public health. From there, I went on to be a program manager for Global Leadership Adventures, so designing international experiential learning trips for teenagers. And then most recently joined Destinations International in August. So that's kind of been my journey since MIIS in 2 minutes or less.
Sharing. Should I go next? Hi, everyone. As was said, my name is Abby Brown. I'm the lead for the Washington State Clean Fuel Standard at the Department of Ecology. I'll get back to what that actually is in just a moment. My career in climate started before MIIS. I worked for a decent chunk of time before leaving to go back to graduate school. So I started on the East Coast. I did a fellowship with the New York City Mayor's Office of Sustainability, helping develop a policy that would help buildings transition from highly polluting heating oil to cleaner options, improving air quality. And then I worked with Environmental Defense Fund, which is a large nationwide environmental NGO, still working on some of the same policies that I worked on at the city. And I was actually a registered lobbyist for EDF. And so while I was both partnering with the city of New York to implement policies, I also was advocating for bills to be passed, resulting in several citywide bills passed mandating energy efficiency retrofits, and worked on broader energy policy in the city, especially after Hurricane Sandy, which knocked out a huge part of the electric grid, and the state had to be thinking more seriously about grid resilience. Then I came to MIIS. At MIIS, I did my internship with the World Resources Institute's NDC partnership, which is a coalition between the World Resources Institute and the UNFCCC to support developing countries meeting their Paris Agreement goals. Things like how to find funding, facilitating peer-to-peer learning, developing monitoring tools, things like that. And I kept working for them remotely as a consultant during my second year at MIIS. And then after MIIS, I got a job. I'm from Washington State originally, and I really wanted to move home after more than a decade away. So I was thrilled to find a job at the Department of Ecology. I was the first hire to implement a newly passed bill reducing a set of greenhouse gases called hydrofluorocarbons, or HFCs, that come from things like refrigerants, aerosols, spray foams. And then about a year and a half after that, there was another bill passed by the Washington State legislature creating the Clean Fuel Standard policy, which is modeled after California's low carbon fuels policy. The policy decarbonizes life cycle greenhouse gas emissions from the production and supply of transportation fuels. So we regulate oil companies and we incentivize producers of low carbon alternative fuels like electricity, biofuels, hydrogen. And I've been working on that for almost the last 5 years. And it's the best and hardest thing I've ever done.
I can go next if Cole, you want to bring up the rear.
Sure.
Hey everyone, my name is Nico DiGolia. I use he, him pronouns, and I am the director of supply chain operations sustainability for Microsoft. Effectively, what that means is it's me and my team's responsibility to figure out how do we actually achieve the 2030 sustainability targets that we have at the enterprise level of being carbon negative, water positive, zero waste, and to protect more land than we use in our operations. And basically figuring out how do we cascade that thinking down into the way that we transport, warehouse, and manufacture all of our products across the globe. I've been doing this now, so also in Washington State, Abby is and the State Department of Ecology are major partners of ours in deploying new types of technology around decarbonizing aviation, trucking, and maritime shipping. But we also, are working, of course, on a global scale, partnering with state and federal agencies, all over the planet to achieve that end. I've been here for about 4 years. Prior to joining Microsoft, I was the Chief Sustainability Officer for Crowley Maritime Corporation, which is the US's largest shipping company based out of Jacksonville, Florida. And before that, I was a consultant for a nonprofit called Business for Social Responsibility, or BSR, where I had the opportunity to work with over 100 different companies to implement their sustainability strategies in transportation, supply chain, and utility scale energy. So like this is very much a passion of mine, is figuring out how do we take these climate ambitions and change the way that businesses operate in order to execute to those ambitions, while simultaneously, of course, remaining in business, which is a critical part of any sustainability program, is balancing the triple bottom line, costs and benefits, so that we can actually continue to grow as an economy while simultaneously achieving our climate goals. And Cole, I guess I'll pass it off to you.
Okay, yeah. Hi, I'm Cole Molino, principal consultant at Blue CSR Strategies. So we're a very small sustainability consulting firm that's located in Cleveland, Ohio. We are now up to four full-time employees, and I was the second to join that team. So um, we, we advise our clients on, a range of things, from strategy to management of their, um, you know, sus- uh, environmental and social topics, and then, disclosure as well. And so we work with a mix of public and private companies, across a range of industries. We're, often an extension to companies' internal sustainability resources. Um, and so, yeah, in my role as a principal, I lead client engagements, I manage projects, I manage our small team, and do business development. Basically, I mean, as small as we are, I wear a lot of hats. So, and so prior to joining Blue CSR, I was a consultant with ERM, which some of you might be familiar with. They're like, one of the biggest sustainability consulting firms out there. So I was a senior associate consultant with them for almost 2 years. And that was the first thing I did out of coming out of MIIS. And it was a great training ground for me for in terms of sustainability consulting. Got to work with a lot of big name clients and really interesting projects. So um, yeah, I guess I'll leave it there, and I'll go into more with the next set of questions. But
We appreciate it. Thank you all for sharing a little bit about. Can you hear me?
it's really hard.
I figured out a way to do this.
Oh, that's better.
Right?
I honestly think if you speak up, we'll be able to hear you.
Okay. I was thinking I could just mute here, and then we can join on Zoom and just talk through our computers.
Oh.
So it's easier. But while we do that, we can just jump into the next question, and then we'll figure that out on our side. So one of the main reason we wanted to have this conversation with you guys was because most of us are planning to graduate either this semester and the upcoming semesters, and there's a lot that's going on in the world, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of things that are changing. For instance, like the retreat on like climate action and like environmental action in like the U.S., but also sort of like in other places. The rise of AI. And what that means for like future like employment. There's a lot that's going on. The current like tense political atmosphere in the U.S. There's like a lot of things that are going on, and so as people who are preparing to graduate and then enter into these career fields that all of you are into, we're just wondering, what are your insights, views, perspectives, ideas on how us as like incoming graduates can best prepare ourselves and like best position ourselves for like career success in an uncertain world, in a changing. What are your thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, small question to get us started here. I guess I can take a first stab at that, maybe while others, gather some thoughts. AI and just general like geopolitical trends and the market disruption that we're seeing now. I think it's important to remember a couple of things. Like one, the market was not always as volatile as it is right now and will stabilize again, right? Like this happened starting in 2025 Q1 because of a number of tariff shocks that were coming into the global economy, which then caused companies to have a lot less certainty than they had historically, which meant then that in terms of like long-term planning, that became a lot more complicated, right? Hiring freezes started to come into effect. Companies started having to shed, roles in order to be able to cover unknown tariff costs because of the volatile nature of the international trading system today. That is not sustainable. The Supreme Court shut that down. Of course, the president is re-engaged in tariff, activity again. That's probably going to get challenged in court. So I just think that like don't focus on like the short-term volatility. Focus on like, hey, what's the long-term arc? And I know that's easy to say and hard to do when you're looking at graduation and then trying to figure out how do you actually get a job. But I just want to say that I don't think the future is going to be as disruptive looking as it is today. The second thing with regards to AI technology is here. It came with a bang with the launch of ChatGPT in 2023 and is continuing to scale and kind of play in a whole bunch of different areas across people's lives, including in the sustainability arena. And so I think that, in terms of setting yourself up for success, the advice that I would give folks if I was, back 5 years ago or 6 years ago, just about to start this phase of my career is like, you should really try to focus on the intersection between different areas of skill. So being a sustainability professional is great, but like, do you know the environment plus the business side? Because if you don't know both sides of that, then you won't be able to be as valuable or flexible in the job opportunities that you can take as if you're a specialist solely in environment or solely in business. Similarly, if you're a quantitative person, maybe learn a little bit more of the soft skills, right? Like focus on, executive presentation skills and all these other, kind of more like interhuman connection types of skills, because that again is like where it's much easier for you to have flexibility and fungibility in terms of the value that you can bring to your employer. And like, I'm sorry to sound like that corporate-y about it, but I think being strategic in saying like, hey, these are the different types of areas where I might want to go. What's the intersection of those things? Identifying that niche and then continuing to drive is at least like what I see as being successful right now. And the areas that we're hiring in are these like jobs that again like kind of play between artificial intelligence and environment, or between operations and strategy, or between corporate communications and sustainability. It's like we're looking for folks who can kind of play multiple roles at the same time versus having deep expertise in one area, which is where we would then generally rely on consultants like we'd find in Cole's practice or in other areas to add that deeper bench so that you can get a higher utilization of that one individual on your team. I probably threw out a lot of different thoughts there. I'm not sure if anybody else.
I want to echo something you said, Nico, which is that I think for me, and this is hard when you're applying for jobs because so often position descriptions are written looking for a very specific technical expertise, like the ability to use GIS, or, can use some, AI or R or something. They're looking for very specific checkboxes. When I would agree with something you said, Nico, which is that I think focusing on those interchangeable skills makes you more adaptable to however the world is changing. So my soapbox that I always get on is that the soft skills are incredibly important and they're almost never asked for on job applications. But you can learn something like you can learn how to use a specific database, but it takes years and years and years to develop skills like policy implementation, like communication, like these things that are kind of the connective tissue of the work that we do and are going to be relevant regardless of how you are able to apply them. So to me, that's a way to kind of build in resilience for yourself as so much is changing in the world around you. Those are those core skills that you're going to be able to apply regardless of the situation.
Yeah,
you go
you
ahead.
go ahead. I'll be quick, just because a lot has already been said that's very valuable. But in terms of my particular industry, which is hospitality and tourism, the human experience never goes away. And so, I mean, you've even seen hotel brands like try to have, an automated robotic check-in, and you lose the human experience. So as the others have already said, keeping your soft skills top of line, learning how to communicate with others, learning how to sell like a certain project that you're working on, or a policy that you're implementing, or anything that is coming up in your role, looking at the human experience, and then learning how to use AI to not do your job, but do your job quicker and better and more efficient. Just even using it from a productivity standpoint would be the way that I would go on looking at it, instead of saying like, oh, AI is going to take all of our jobs. No, the human experience never goes away. So keeping those skills top of mind. And then also look around you. These people are going to be some of your best resources. Maybe not the ones on this call, but the ones that you are sitting next to in class. Like, beyond them becoming lifelong friends, this is a network of really valuable people who, as they continue to grow in their careers and you continue to grow in yours, you all end up becoming resources for each other. And I think that's the really beautiful thing about graduate school, is that you're all hyper focused on something that you love, that is highly skilled, and then go out in the world and use each other in a beautiful way.
Yeah, I just want to plus one on that, Aaron, that like the way that you show up and network is absolutely key. And I want to call out Xiao on this call here. So far, I've gotten one LinkedIn request since we started this conversation, and that's a mistake. That's a deficiency for everybody else in this conversation. You should be leveraging this opportunity, because we're on here and talking with you, and it's a small group, to be connecting with us on LinkedIn. Shoot over a personal message and be like, hey, it was great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking an hour out of your busy day to do this. That's the type of thing that people remember, right? And if you're just sitting on your couch at home and letting your grad school experience ride on by without focusing on the rule of thirds, 1/3 class time, 1/3 network, 1/3 extracurriculars, you're not going to get the most out of your grad student experience. And then you're not going to set yourself up for long-term career success because you won't have built the network, you won't have built the resume, and maybe you will have gotten a 4.0 in the class, but you're not going to be able to take that anywhere.
Yeah, I'll just add to that with, so I was reflecting on like my time immediately post grad, and first off, it's like insane that it's like 7 years ago. It does not feel like that long ago. But so I finished my program at the end of 2019, and immediately started job hunting in the beginning of 2020. And I was I was interviewing for a position at ERM, where I ended up landing a position finally. But and this relates. I'll get to this. Like, so I was in, like, it took because it's such a big organization. It was multiple rounds of interviews. I mean, I started interviewing in January and got to like the second week of March of 2020, and they were like, okay, we're going to put together an offer. Like, it's, basically a done deal. And then, like, the whole, everyone knows what happened in like mid-March of 2020, like the world shut down, and they went on a hiring freeze, which was in retrospect crazy because, I mean, actually, ESG was taking off and they needed to be hiring more people. But that's all beside the point. Like, for me, I was then like, spent the rest of the year. I was so close to getting that position and starting, work. And then I went from that to like spending the rest of that year continuing to apply and interview for positions, but didn't get anything until I ended up, persistent with ERM and following up, and networking with people at ERM, so that when they ended the hiring freeze towards the end of that year, I was able to get a follow-on interview and ended up getting an offer. But so I just tell that because, like, that was a very, I mean, it's not the same as today with like all of the like political and economic like headwinds, but also like a very, uncertain, unprecedented time that we were in, and so like I just think there's a ton of value. All right, obviously, like things that we've all said about, leveraging your network, being extremely persistent. I mean, yeah, I don't even want to know how many. I'm sure I had a spreadsheet at the time, but like how many, positions I was like applying to and interviewing for, and everything. So I would just say, like, I know it can feel, hopeless, but like just um keep at it, and work on what you can control. And obviously, just like what Abby, Aaron, and Nico have all said, like, focusing on the skills that are going to be important for you in the roles you're trying to get, and making the most of your experience while you're at MIIS, not just in the classroom, but like all the things outside of it, the internships, the opportunities to connect with other students, and all of that. So
But I think that like the point that you just made, and maybe a question for my fellow three panelists, like how many of us got the jobs that we're in today, by cold applying online?
Actually did.
Okay. Did you know nobody over there before?
I didn't know a single person.
My first job at ecology, yeah, it was a cold apply.
Oh, okay.
So half of the people on this panel got the job from cold applying. And I would say that that's the exception, not the norm, right? Like, like I know Cole, you got the job through the other the founding consultant there, right?
Yeah.
And then at ERM, there was a lot of networking. Same for me at Microsoft. Like I was tapped and pulled in. It's all about the network, right? Because if we're getting 500, 600 resumes for a job, in that stack of 600, over half have master's degrees for my team. So like, how do you differentiate? Right? It's about who do you know, where have you been, what have you done, And the only way to build that brand for yourself is by, starting early.
It does work a little differently in the private sector. We aren't really allowed to network around hiring opportunities in the same way, which is not to say that if you don't have an existing relationship or experience with someone, that doesn't contribute to you getting a job, but it does work a little differently depending on the sector. Something else I also want to throw into this conversation is that I know a lot of the focus is around getting the job, but given how challenging the world is right now, there's also a lot to be said for getting a job you want to stay in for a long time. And part of that is not just the content of the work that you do, although of course that's important, it's the people you're working with. And so as you're interviewing for jobs, you're also interviewing that organization and the people you would be working on a team with to see if they're actually people you would like working with. Because I can't tell you how many times, especially I mean, not especially, a lot of things are thankless jobs, but in climate, it's thankless work a lot of the time. And if you aren't working with people who help propel you in that work and make coming to the job every day interesting and challenging and fun, sometimes it's not worth working that day. And so just something to keep in mind is I would say that's almost as important as just getting the job in the first place, is if you're actually going to have long-term retention in that job, if you're going to want to be there for a long time. And I've also been in positions where I just had to take the job that was given to me. So I'm aware that that's not always an option, but if you have the option, be thinking about, are these people I would actually want to work with? And is this a job I would want to stay in for a long time? Because that does help when things either in the job or outside of the job are chaotic and tense and, changing rapidly. Having that strong foundation really, really helps.
I'm glad you brought up of having to take the job that's being given to you at the time, because that is also advice I have for many young people, and I consider us all very young on this screen. But to say yes, like I tell teenagers that all the time, is to just continue to say yes in your career. And I think I got this job by cold interviewing or however, because I had all of these random skill sets. Like I had worked in small hotels. I own a small hotel. I work with my own visitors and convention bureau. I was in the Peace Corps. Like the type of expertise is like for my resume is like all over the place. And I think sometimes we're told that that's a very bad thing. But then as you continue to climb the ladder and these roles end up becoming more dynamic and you need all these random skills for one particular job, the fact that I said yes to an unpaid internship 20 years ago is what ultimately got me where I am today. So you don't always have to look for the perfect job all the time. You can quit, you can move on, you can learn, you can grow within that career, you can hop sectors, like you can hop companies, like don't get bogged down in finding the perfect role.
Mm-hmm.
Always easier to get a better job when you have a good job.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I mean, part of like, what I'm sure you're so good at, Aaron, then is like, even because, I did several things, things in my early 20s that didn't all necessarily seem connected, but a key, going when you're interviewing for things is being able to like tell that story of how, everything that
Yeah.
you've done up until that point is helped you, is going to be key for that. Maybe not everything you've done, but like, enough things that you've done in these prior roles are all like skills that you've developed that are great for that role. So it's like, being able to tell that story and connect all those different things that on paper might seem like
Mhm.
not as cohesive of a like, resume, I guess. So the other thing that I just like have to plug for that to go back to like what Nico said, is that, yeah, the job that I have now, I did not like apply for. It was my so somebody that I met right after I graduated from grad school, actually, and I moved back to Cleveland, like pretty much like right after I moved back, I met him. It's funny. And it was at a bar crawl of all places that I like wasn't even gonna go to because I was like, I'm too old to be going to bar crawls. But I just
Never.
no, no, yeah,
I
exactly.
did a bar crawl on Tuesday. What are you talking
And
about?
I'm not advocating for like networking at like bar crawling
I'll
as a
advocate for that. Yeah.
specifically as a networking tool, but I will it's funny because yeah, we like met at at this bar crawl of a mutual friend of ours. Um and he ended up starting his own consultancy. He's worked in sustainability for, many years. And he's like, I don't know, 10 or so years older than I am. And um he wanted to start his own consultancy, and when he was first looking to like hire someone 2 years kind of after getting it started when I was working at ERM during that whole time, he we had become good friends in the meantime, and so when he was looking to hire, his next person, he approached me about it. And so, I jumped at the chance to keep working in corporate sustainability consulting, but not be doing it at such a big, firm, which I didn't love that element of it. So, um, yeah, just like something you never know where you can meet connections that end up, being so meaningful. And him and his husband introduced me to my now husband. So like now have a job and a husband because of him, I guess. So
So
I
go on more
routinely
pub crawls. This is my takeaway.
Exactly. I routinely tell people that my career is built on beer and coffee, right? Because it's just about networking, right? And you could replace that with tea, or you could replace that with, whatever it is that works for your own context. I do just want to respond to, yeah, three cheers for pub crawls, exactly. I do want to respond to Sophie here in the chat about, hey, like, what's the current climate around international students, because I do want to just be respectful of the fact that we have a lot of international students in the MIIS alumni network, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It sucks. Like, the current climate for international students being hired in the U.S. sucks. The visa situation is complicated. The H-1B situation is expensive and complicated now, and that doesn't mean that it's impossible. Leverage the fact, particularly if you're an IEP, that you have OPT plus 2, right? So you have 3 years of eligibility to work in the United States without a requirement for sponsorship, and just like try to get as much experience in conversations under your belt as you can, and then figure out that stuff later, and hopefully the circumstance will change. But sorry, Sophie, I don't have a better answer for you other than it's really shitty. Like, we still hire, of course, as Microsoft, folks from abroad, but I have an intern from Spain who came to the US for her master's degree. We brought her on board in 2022, and we're still fighting for her to get legal status here 4 years later. And it's required us to be super flexible as an employer, having her work from Canada for 6 months, allowing her to go back to Spain for visa appointments. Like, so it's a tremendous lift. And I don't think that you'll find as many companies in 2026 that are willing to do that as were maybe in 19, 18, etc. And so apologies for like kind of being a Debbie Downer, but that just is the reality of the job market that you're about to step into.
Yeah, I will echo that by saying it's a true shame how challenging it is right now, because I do know of instances where, for example, the Department of Ecology has sponsored someone's visa, and it's still a long, difficult, frustrating process. And I think that is those, even having that opportunity is it's few and far between. And it yeah, it really shouldn't be that way, but it is an unfortunate reality right now that the visa situation, you could be the best, most qualified candidate and receive the job offer, and things can still go off the rails because of the visa process. So I would say it is not, I same as you, Nico, it doesn't mean you won't get the job and it doesn't mean things won't work out in your favor. It just is very unfortunately much more challenging.
Bigger hill. It's a bigger
Yeah.
hill.
Yep.
Climb. I mean,
Yeah.
when the H-1B situation was announced right back in September, that there was, potential additional restrictions coming on H-1B employees. Uh, I had 4 members of my team on H-1B visas that were traveling internationally for work. And we activated our security protocol to have them immediately escorted to the airport and put NFO so that they could be repatriated back to the US in advance of the closure that was announced. It was announced on a Wednesday. They said that there was the potential that H-1Bs were no longer able to return to the US if you were out of the country, effective on the Friday, right? So we were flying people back from China, from the UK, and from Brazil, all just like an emergency way, which, by the way, costs, our team, not that it matters, we can afford it, but costs us tens of thousands of dollars to be able to execute on that. And that's something that, like, a lot of employers will have a hard time taking that risk today.
And I will also say that nearly 1/3 of my team that I work with every day were not born in the US and are fantastically valuable both as humans and as teammates. And it would be in all of our various work settings to our greatest advantage to be able to have the opportunity to hire candidates regardless of whatever paperwork is in place, to get the best people to do the best work. And it's often that we would like to do that, and it is not possible on paper, which is deeply unfortunate.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Sorry to be a Debbie Downer on that one, Sophie, but just wanted to be honest.
Well, I can be optimistic. The companies that I have worked for all have very international staff. I don't know how they do it. I don't work in the human resources department. But I would look for companies that, like, when you look at the About Us, or you see kind of all of the people's headshots in their bios, see if there are international people on the team. Both of those jobs have been remote jobs, but I work with people all over the world. So there are companies out there that are making it work in one way or another. I don't know the back end of it, but I think, on a positive note, finding the right company, you'll have a more global advantage in that way.
Yeah,
That's
it's
great.
definitely depends on the sector and everything.
Right. Thank you, Carol. Can you hear me? You can hear me, right? Okay.
Yes.
Well, I figured it out. I think that was amazing. That was a great conversation. I was also just like going through my questions and I'm like, oh my God, they just like answered everything I had. Which is fantastic. So I think if people have questions, they can start adding them in like the group chat, or unmuting and then introducing themselves and then asking their questions. I want to go back to something that we'd mentioned about, like, when crises happen, and like, let's say, I think there was a mention of like when I think Cole mentioned how during like 2020, you'd applied for a job, you were almost there, and then COVID happened and had to sort of like adapt. So I want to go back to that, because at least it's something that I think about, and I think maybe it's on other people's minds, is during this time, when there's like all these different things that are happening, are there any, like, what are some, I guess, mindsets or habits that young professionals like us, who are, early in our careers, can sort of like adapt so that we can stay, resilient during this time? Because we can talk about it, but it's definitely hard to do in practice. And so what are some mindsets or habits or practices that we can do? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. One thing I'll say about just like the like tactical side of, and then I'll go to like the, more the habit side of things. But like while I was doing all that, like I found while I was continuing to like hunt for something that was long term and permanent and like paid well and all checked all the things, I got like kind of created this fellowship with this organization called the Impact Finance Center. It's a really small organization, but they were doing work all, around the US and impact finance. They're based in Denver. I, again, was like networking and got connected to that small team and kind of like created this fellowship that paid somewhat, but I mean, it was not much, but and it was very part-time, but it gave me something to do that was still I was getting experience, like I was, like staying engaged. So I think it had both like the practical side of like continuing to gain experience and be something that when I landed a job, I said, oh yeah, I was doing something during this time, and getting more experience and but also for like a mental standpoint too. It's like it helped me probably not feel so like defeated because in the meantime I was applying to a million things and not hearing a word or very little. So that's definitely a key if you can do that, if you can find something that I know it's not great to have like unpaid or not paid well, but like continue to find ways to gain experience in the thing that you want to do, while you're finding your like something that actually like pays the bills and like is full-time work and so that and then like on the like, and I'm sure Abby, Aaron, and Nico have plenty of other like tips in terms of like staying sane. But yeah, I mean, during that time, like I will just say for me, what's like super important is routine. So I, carved out time every day to be working on applying to things and but I didn't spend like the entire day doing that because like it was, almost a year like that you're not that's not realistic. So like, carve out time every day to keep like working on it, but then continue to and I mean I was fortunate enough that I, landed back at my parents, so I, wasn't working full time, but um like, yeah, you have to find ways to like stay sane. And I don't know. I mean, that was a crazy time during COVID and I worked out a lot. That was my
Just
coping mechanism.
or just lean into being not sane,
That too. Yeah.
I did not make sourdough bread during the pandemic, but I do now. But I did build a business, and that's ultimately what I did with that time. I was in the middle of contracts taking teenagers around the world and had always had this dream of opening a small eco lodge and was sitting on 26 acres of rural land in Mississippi with two parents that supported me. And we just took that break as a time to build the business. And I think kind of as Cole was saying, like even when you're not employed, you can still do things that can help lead to your employment in the future. And also like, just because the position that you want doesn't exist somewhere doesn't mean that you can't reach out to them and like make one. They may say no, but like, okay, well, that's the worst that they'll say is no, no, thank you. We don't have that in the budget. But if you can find a way to financially prove that the role that you're presenting to them, even if it is a fellowship, an internship, a full-time position, who knows? Ultimately, and I was going to say this earlier, but the most important skill that you need is to learn how to sell. That's all you're going to do in life. Everything. You're selling yourself. You're selling the projects that you want in life. You're selling your ideas. Learn how to sell appropriately, and you'll be able to create positions and climb the ladder and switch industries. So yeah, I'm rambling now, but I've made my point.
That was so much more impressive. You built a business.
Well, and like you said, you have to take a little time not making money. I'm not rich. It doesn't make me this business does not make me rich and powerful. But it does fuel my passion. And I think ultimately I was tired of not having a steady paycheck and not having health insurance, and the stress of that unknown was far more stressful for me than the stress of having two jobs. So now I have a full-time remote job and I also run this business. I point out here because it's all like on this part of the land. But figure out what type of stress you want in your life. Is it the stress of being poor? Is it the stress of being busy? Because like everything that you want in life is going to have some sort of stress. You just have to pick which one you want.
But I also think, Aaron, like you wanted to start that eco lodge for so many years, right? Like it was your dream right after undergrad, if I'm remembering right, or maybe even during your undergraduate education, that you then carried through at MIIS almost every single MBA, case study or program or presentation was a different facet of that business dream too, that you were then using your time in grad school to explore. And so I think, like, just to connect what you and Cole were saying, and then share my own experience, it's that, like, leverage the time at MIIS to create the future that you want. Like, don't be passive about that. Like, I know, Pete, you're doing some ed tech innovation work, right? I'm not sure how you're connecting that in with MIIS, but I'm sure that there's something there just based on the LinkedIn perusing that I just did. Like, there's an opportunity to leverage this time to actually, like, create that career. My second internship at MIIS was my OCRM summer, fellowship experience at this nonprofit that I then, like, stayed hooked into and just continued to try to message value. I said, hey, look, I could do this research and it's tied with my academics, so you only have to pay me half time, to Cole's point, right? Or, hey, like, I can jump on a plane and I can go and facilitate this conference. You just have to pay for my plane ticket over there and I'll do it for free, right? Like, all of these things, that was because I was a student, I had a little bit more flexibility there. And then I just kept demonstrating value, demonstrating value, demonstrating value. And then, so by the end of the summer, there was the summer fellowship, which was funded by the CBE. And then I did that kind of like cobbling together of shit for this fall semester. By the spring, I was hired full time. And I still had a full year of grad school to go, right, before I finished. But I said, hey, I'm going to just, like, I was living in my pickup truck at the time. I'm like, I'm going to save as much money as possible, work full time for this nonprofit, plus do MIIS, like, just try to cobble something together. And then that led me immediately into, like, continuing a full time role after grad school and being able to use the income that I had to move back up to San Francisco. And I think that, like, that like willingness or ability to kind of play the long game will set you up for success.
I have
I
never
also,
worked for
as a,
free where they don't ask me to come back and hang out more. Everyone is always like, oh, can you come stay longer? And it's like, not for free, I can't. And then they start
Yep.
paying.
And then you put the coat of pain on them, to use Aaron's sales strategy here, and say, but now if you don't pay, then you're going to not be able to do all these things that became part of the business's plan. And so you're going to have to walk away from customer commit.
One thing, though, I think in a lot of our fields, and I remember us talking a lot about this when we were at MIIS, is that if you work in a sector or a field where part of it is mission oriented, or you are often being asked to work for free or work for less pay than you should, and I work for the government, so I'm already making less money than I should be or could be elsewhere. But there is this standing expectation that, oh, well, you love it, so you should be willing to work for free or, work longer hours or whatever. And I want to just plug here, I'm pretty anti-hustle, so I'm not at all what Nico's experience, completely different from mine. And I think there's a lot, I think it's kind of goes back to what Aaron said earlier about choosing what you want to be stressed about, choosing the times when the right course is to say yes and grind and hustle and work those extra hours, and being strategic about when you say no to things. I think no lesson to me is more important than learning when it is actually the best choice to say no to something. So just want to plug that in here, that there is certainly something, and all of us have worked long hours and unpaid internships and, done these things that I wish had been paid or paid better or all of the above. And sometimes you're in a situation where that is your only option. When you have an option and when it is the right choice. And part of, I feel like, growing in your career is learning when it is the time to make that right choice. So, most of my early career, I just said yes to everything and figured it out, even if it was almost killing me. And now I know enough to know when I'm close to that line and to say no to something. So it's also just a skill to be developing in the mix.
But I think that complements what Erin was saying about just saying yes too, right? Like you say yes up to a point, and then you learn what's valuable and what's going to bring you closer to your
Yeah.
goal and what's not, right? And then
And
you can
nothing
turn.
is lost any time you spend, even if you get a job and you realize you don't like it or you don't like the work, you want to do something different. None of that is lost experience. None of that is a waste. It's always informing your next choices. It's always informing how you do work in the future. So nothing, if you take a risk on something, it is going to serve you in one way or another. You are going to learn something from it. So nothing is wasted opportunity.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. Do do we have any questions from the audience? Yes, Jasmine, you can start.
Hi, thank you for sharing your insights with us. I have a question about job searching, and hopefully I did not miss that because I joined a little bit late. I often hear advice that applicants should reach out to HR or the whoever is in charge of the position after they applied for the position. Sometimes I would shoot them an email. I was just wondering, when you how is that usually perceived? If you see an email in your email box like that, just randomly some applicants reach out, how do you feel about that?
Are you talking about before or after the
Well,
application?
usually I think it's right
Yeah.
after I apply to the job, I would just let them know like,
Yeah, I always think that's a nice touch. And I do pay attention to the candidates that do and do not send, some sort of either it could be very brief. It doesn't have to be anything too time intensive. It could just be a thank you, appreciate your time, excited about the opportunity. I don't think it's necessary at all, but I do notice it and appreciate it when it happens.
Yeah, I'll say for us, I mean, when we've hired two additional people, we've added full time, and we've hired several, interns over the course of the 3.5 years that I've been there. And you know, I handle, like we're it's crazy how many applications we get just for like the size we are. So I will say it does, it certainly helps when you add a note, either through LinkedIn or by email, just that you've submitted, and just like help yourself stand out a little bit. I don't think it hurts.
I think it
Yeah.
depends on the role, it depends on the industry, and it depends on how many applicants this particular role is getting. Because if there are thousands and thousands of applicants, which a lot of roles there are, like that email is almost probably more of a nuisance than it is a help. But if it's a small company and you're like, hey, I'm super jazzed on this role and I'm really excited, I think that could be a really nice touch. I will also tell you, having hired many, many, many people, those kind of like what Abby said, those messages don't really matter. If you're good at your job and you're good at this role and you're a
Yeah.
good company fit for the culture and you didn't send an email, point
Yeah.
blank, I didn't send an email, still got the job. I
Yeah.
also just did a whole round of interviews for people, and the one who was not the most qualified sent the email, and it's like, sorry, buddy, you still didn't get the job. So it's like, I wouldn't really harp too much on that.
Yeah. Doesn't
I would
Ultimately,
it's
it's more
nice.
important. It's nice. It's more important to know how to interview well. I would say
Yeah.
that.
that, and I would
Because
say,
Absolutely.
Yeah, it just maybe just like, super tactical advice. Pay for LinkedIn Premium. Like as
Disagree.
you're as you're applying for the job. Oh, I guess it depends on your sector, right? But like if you're applying in the private sector, pay for LinkedIn Premium, get the insights on the job, understand who else is applying, and see who posted it. And then if you want to send a note, you can send a super targeted note to the hiring manager, who's the one who posted the job on LinkedIn, right? But that also then gives you maybe a better sense of like, hey, what's the likelihood that I'm going to hear back here? I would also sign up for like job boards that are relevant to your industry, right? So if you're looking for a job in corporate sustainability, sign up for Ed Carley's job board that goes out every Sunday and posts a bunch of jobs that are early in career. And there's so many other ones that are out there on LinkedIn. That way you can stay fresh. I'd say like learning to interview is the most important thing. Applying early is the second most important thing. And then the third most important thing, at least in my field, is building your network. And that is something that you do by going to conferences, by connecting with folks like in this forum that you talk with. Because when we start shortlisting applicants, we read every resume and we go on LinkedIn and we look at their experience. If you and I have 40 mutual connections on LinkedIn and you sent me a note for a job that you applied to or that I posted, I'm much more likely to at least give you a screening call because like there's less risk because the community of practitioners has already connected and engaged with you.
And we're going to our mutuals and we're asking about you. So
exactly,
make sure that the people who you have mutual connections with like are good ones.
Are valuable. Yeah. Because if I send a note and I'm like, hey, tell me about Jasmine, and they're like, who the fuck is Jasmine? Probably not a good thing either.
Very different in the public sector. We don't do any of that. So I would say from our hiring perspective, LinkedIn might as well not exist. Like it makes no difference at all. And I think it is very useful for thinking about, like Nico was saying, that kind of, can we get coffee? I want to talk about the work you do. I want to learn about your career path. Those kinds of connections, phenomenal. But I do remember also we got the advice when we were at MIIS that basically was the only career advice we got at the time which was just to hit a certain number of LinkedIn connections. And I think that
500 plus
do anything. Right. I don't think that does anything. So
I will tell you what it does do is it allows you to connect with people. I don't know enough about LinkedIn, but I have so many connections that it allows me to go people that I'm normally just told I can follow. I can actually click another button and hit connect because I have so many mutuals with them or so many different connections or something. So yeah, I would say get a little slutty on LinkedIn and start connecting with people in your industry.
Hot takes from Aaron here. Get slutty on LinkedIn.
That, and I will say, like, for especially like big organizations like ERM, like they're you can be a great applicant and you can have a really hard time getting through like to land an interview. And so like what was super helpful for me is connecting with people who knew people who worked there so that they would introduce me so that I could then like I had a call, with somebody who was working there at the time and, kind of just sold like, just had a network, a networking call and got them to be like, okay, I'll elevate your like I'll flag your application to our HR people. So to me that's even at a big organization like I don't know how helpful it is at all to like email the HR person because they're getting like so many like applicants. So for a medium to big organization, I would say what I think would be more helpful, at least for like anything like what I do, is like connecting with somebody who is like on the team that you are trying to like work with and get them to like flag your application for you. So if you can do that.
Plus, the chances of them opening your resume in an email is pretty low. The chances of them even opening the email is pretty low. But you send a message on LinkedIn or you connect on LinkedIn, your resume is like right there with your name. So it's kind of a good way to show your experience and the connections that you have too. So
I put a screenshot that I just took of my inbox here like that. And I declare email bankruptcy on the 1st of every month. 13th, meaning I mark all of my messages as read. It's now the 13th. Please don't send me an email with your resume.
Do you have any other questions from the audience?
Hi, Nico. Hi, everyone. Thank you for your time and just like for your sharing. And actually, I'm the one who tried to connect Nico through LinkedIn. I'm so sorry. I use that kind of way. And
Oh, it's good. That was good. That was a positive. That was a positive thing.
And I also connect other people. I'm so sorry.
Stop saying sorry. Don't apologize.
Okay.
It's all good. That was the right thing to do.
Yeah, I'm just want to show my gratitude and saying thank you to all of your sharing because, as a graduate student nowadays, everything's so anxious. I mean, like you just reach out people like as much as you want on LinkedIn. So yeah, it's really nice to learn like how to handle the things in a technical way. Yeah. Thank you all for your time.
You're welcome.
Of
Thank you.
course.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else have questions from the audience?
Yeah, I will just say you're more than welcome to like reach out to connect with me on
Yeah.
LinkedIn if you'd like. I'm happy to connect.
And something that I think is underestimated is like, yes, people are busy, but also people like to talk about themselves and the work they do. And so reaching out and saying, "Hey, I'd love to hear about, how you got to where you are in your career or whatever project you're working on, whatever." Yes, people are busy, but also people will probably want to talk to you. So, yeah, would definitely recommend reaching out, asking, do it.
Sales 101. Get them talking about themselves.
Yeah, I think that that's probably the most valuable advice that Aaron shared earlier, like that you guys heard on this call, is like if you can before you graduate, just like read a couple books or take an online class on sales. Learn how to talk about yourself, learn how to show up, you know, like so many people reach out from MIIS and it's like the camera like cuts them off here. They don't send a thank you note after. They like are 3 or 4 minutes late to the call that they set up with you. Like all of that stuff, like how you show up matters. You know, like the four of us were texting this morning and we're like, are we wearing blazers today? Or are we wearing like button up shirts? Like, what's the level? Like, how do we
What's the
want
dress code?
the dress code? How do we want to show up to this thing? Don't show up like in bed. Like, I literally had a networking call with a MIIS student last week where they were in bed with me on the call. Like, that doesn't bode well if you're then asking me to introduce you to someone. Because I'm going to say, sorry, it was 11 a.m. Pacific time and they were chilling in their sheets and like looked like shit. I'm not going to introduce them to you because I don't think that that's like going to be a good or meaningful connection. So like just how you present yourself actually matters, particularly when you're early in career.
And
I
something
say
that
dress for the position that you want, not the one that you have, or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Exactly.
something that I think applies both for like when you're meeting people for, say, an informational interview or you're interviewing for a job, or also then when you're actually doing the work and you're trying to get people to agree with you, it almost doesn't matter what you know if you can't communicate it effectively. So being able to create a strong narrative, tell a good story, whether it's about yourself, whether it's about the work you're doing, is incredibly effective. So just something to think about, like, what do you want the person to walk away with? Why would they care? Why should they care? And make sure you give them something to hold on to.
I guess you don't have a lot of business classes anymore at MIIS now that the MBA program's gone, but you're crafting your personal elevator pitch is like, I think something that every student should have to do. You're literally stuck in an elevator with someone and you want to tell them about where you are, where you've been, where you want to go. How do you do that concisely and effectively? Yeah, very important.
Well, I had so many questions, and somehow we've gone through all of them. I think maybe as a final question, I don't know, I always like leaving when I like when like a meeting ends before time, and so I think if we don't have any other questions, I'll just like ask a final one. Slightly different but still related on leadership. That's something that we talk about a lot in like our classes. But I think it also shows up in, workplaces, and not just workplaces, even in real life. So I guess from your own experiences, work and life, you've been like in leadership roles, different leadership roles. What are, let's say, 1, 2, 3 most important leadership lessons or principles that you've learned that you could share with us, so that it can inform us on like how we show up. We're just talking about how we show up whether it's like workplaces or in other responsibilities.
Yeah, I'll go. I think and this all goes back to my hospitality career, because that's really where I started, was managing hotels and restaurants. And you do that, you do customer service and hospitality while always anticipating the guest needs, anticipating the next problem that's going to happen, anticipating what employee is going to call in sick today. And I think that if you can live your life like that, always anticipating what may happen in a role or what may happen in a project or in a meeting, and staying ahead of that, those are the people that you want to hire. Those are the people that you want on your team, where you're like, this may go wrong, but I've already done this in a way to prevent that from happening. It may not go wrong, but just know that I've already done that. And I think that is kind of like silent, quiet leadership, of always staying a step or 5 ahead. And especially if you can learn to stay a step ahead of your boss, because then they will come to you like, oh, this went wrong. And you're like, I actually already thought about that, and I've already done this in preparation for that. And I think that has really been something that, like, honestly, waiting tables has taught me how to do. And now bringing that into like corporate America has been extremely valuable. And you don't have to go around telling people that you've done it. Just do it. And then when shit hits the fan, you're already prepared.
Yeah, I think being flexible and anticipating worst possible outcome and having multiple plans in place, kind of thinking about how you can be flexible when things go off the rails, because to a certain extent, things are always going to go off the rails. And so how can you be adaptable to that situation and already have thought through, okay, well, if that happens, I already know I have 3 options open to me that can either course correct or change the situation to make it work for us or whatever, and kind of be running those scenarios in your head. If you're a person with anxiety, you're probably already doing that, so you're fine. I also think for me personally, transitioning from the part of my career where I was mostly focused on myself and how do I make myself stand out, to then leading a team, one of the things I really had to teach myself was patience. When I was just thinking about myself, I was convinced that the only way to make myself stand out or succeed was being the kid at the front of the class with my hand up first and speaking first and loudest. And when you are managing a team, when you are leading people, you can't really operate like that. Sometimes you do, but not, you really need to be patient and work with people. And especially if you're mentoring younger people, you need to let them speak first. Like, there's all sorts of things that require patience that I did not have and had to teach myself. So, but yeah, I think being adaptable is one of the most used skills, because things are always going to go wrong. And if you're the kind of person that freezes up and can't think about what comes next, that's a problem. So yeah, just be thinking about how you can roll with it and go, okay, yep, we thought that was a possibility. We hoped it wasn't. We planned for the fact that it wasn't. It still happened. How do we deal with it?
On my side, I love what both Aaron and Abby shared. On my side, there's like 2 leadership principles that I think have helped me. The first is that it's my job as a leader to create as much clarity as possible around what good looks like for my team. And the way that we do that is by reducing complexity. There's 3 levels. There's like the complicated, the complex, and the simple, and it should be our job as a leader to take the information that's incoming and knock it down one level of complexity on that scale. But of course, not dumbing it down, right? That's not the same thing, but it's about trying to generate clarity in what is ultimately like a really complicated job field that we want to go into for those of us that are working in environment. There's all these trade-offs. And then the second one is generate energy, because I think it was Abby who was mentioning earlier that like sometimes the job is hard and it sucks, and there's like a lot of decisions that need to be made, and some of them I don't agree with, and I know that my team won't agree with, right? Like, for example, with the tariffs, we had to have over a dozen jets moving cargo all over the world to get around tariffs, resulting in hundreds of thousands of additional tons of carbon emissions. I'm not happy about that. But we have to generate energy on the team to say, hey, this is the situation. It's now on us to figure out how are we going to mitigate that and get back on track with our goals. This is a cool opportunity to be responsive in a high growth environment where we like previously would have kind of just stuck to our plans and just executed straight ahead. That's boring. Let's now we got like a curveball thrown at us. Like let's actually go out and figure out how do we get those jets on the ground as sustainably as possible? How do we do fuel switching? How do we leverage the low carbon fuel standard that Abby promised me a few years ago that we haven't yet seen the benefits of here in Washington State in terms of increased staff
Gotta
production?
join. Microsoft hasn't joined.
I know. But like the point being that you have to like bring up that energy because it's then like you as the leader are who everybody else looks to take their cue on how they carry themselves through the rest of the day. So again, just to like clarify it, because that's the first one, generate clarity and generate energy in your work is like the two things that I would say, one should do.
I would just add that, like I've had some some really great managers and some really like not great managers, and I think that's like probably the case for everybody. And unless you're lucky to just like always have great managers, but like it like looking back now, I can see that, it's really helped me home, like take all of those like great skills of good managers, take those forward with me into like my management, my like leadership style. Um, and then, you really, as challenging as like tough managers can be, it really has helped me grow like my leadership skills because I've had to learn to like manage up. So when you're in a really big organization and like ERM was, and I had 4 managers in like 2 years, which was crazy, but we just had a lot of turnover at the time. And so I got to experience like, okay, very quickly in a very short amount of time, like, okay, some people are really good at this and some people aren't. And um, but I would just say like when you're really like struggling with a manager who's not doing a great job, like that's a great time to like build your own skills in managing up and like figuring out what you need, and communicating that to your manager. And like Aaron was saying, kind of like you have to take the lead, and make things happen, take things off their plate. Like, when you're preparing to meet with them for your like check-ins, for example, like, plan ahead if they're not the type who's going to do that so that you can be advocating for, what you need. And um, so yeah, I think there's a lot of like great, as challenging as like bad managers can be in the moment, like that's an opportunity. When I look back, like that's probably where I've grown the most is like figuring out like how to get through those situations. So something to think about. I don't
In
Cole
case
is
you
talking.
haven't learned, like the 4 of us could talk to an empty room and we could continue to talk forever.
know.
One last.
Love it.
I had a minute. So there's two, I guess there's 2 ways to answer the leadership question. If you're talking about being a leader, managing a team, or being like a new hire at a new job. But I had a manager once tell me, you're going to make the wrong decision. That's fine. It happens all the time. You're learning. I will support you. I will have your back no matter what decision you make. In front of people, I will support you. We're going to go in the back office and we'll talk about what we did wrong and how we can make that better. And that leadership from a director that I had at that time gave me the confidence to then go be a different type of manager. So if you are managing people, showing that you are confident in them, I think is step number 1. In order to get to a place where you are confident with them, you must train them well. And so my second philosophy as a leader is always to train heavy, train hard so that I can manage light. Because if I'm having to micromanage you, you are not making my life easier. You're making my life more difficult. And every employee's role should be to make their manager's life easier. As simple as that sounds.
Mm-hmm.
That is amazing. I like the last point because I think sometimes I do micromanage a lot. So that's something that personally I'll be working on.
Trusting
Um,
people goes a long way, obviously within reason, and that doesn't mean things go unexcused, but trust has a great way of empowering people to then take risks and make good decisions in the future.
And ultimately surprise you and show you something that you didn't even think was possible.
That's true. And I will grow too. I will learn too. So I'll be practicing that the rest of the semester. I would like to thank you all for making time to just show up and share your professional experiences and life experiences. I love the energy. I think everyone loved the energy. It was great to see that. All of you were connected and friends at MIIS, and you're still connected. Afterwards, I think it gives us something to like look forward to, especially with the closure of the school, knowing that we'll still have those relationships, like they'll carry us in the future. We've definitely, I think you've touched upon so many different points that I'm still thinking about all of it, and I think I'll think about it deeply later. But I do want to come to, I guess, like a few things that I noted down as like one, I guess, learning to share your experiences, talk about your experiences, talk about yourself, networking and like building relationships, because that goes a long way. And I was just talking about this, I think this entire week. I was talking to people who were applying for jobs and internships, and I'm talking to my friends and I'm saying, I think we really need to focus a lot on like networking rather than just sending 100 applications every week or so. I think that would go a long way. And so it was a good thing to hear from like to hear the same thing from you guys who are like in the field, and they're like, welcoming early career and, young professionals. It gives us I guess more confidence in that and pursuing like networking and all of that. And then also leveraging our time at MIIS. I think it's easy to think, oh, we're just here for studying and, finding an internship and, hopefully we'll land a job. But I think from what everyone shared, there's something that we learn about, there's still so many opportunities that we can take advantage of that personally I didn't realize I had. We can create something that's not there if we took the time to just think about our passions and take advantage of like the people around us. So thank you very much for sharing all of that. We will reach out and connect with you on LinkedIn and with other people as well.
Thank you for supporting our Microsoft products.
Thank you too. It helps us too. I think it's a win-win.
Can't help yourself, Nico.
Always be selling coffees for closers.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, well, thank you so much. And I don't know, Jaden, do you have anything you want to add before we conclude?
Yeah, I don't have any other questions, but yeah, thank you.
I think there's a lot of great content. I'm glad we recorded it, and so it's going to be kept, and other people who were not able to join us can hear from you guys. Yeah.
Have a great rest of y'all's day.
Sounds great.
Weekend ahead.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
See you day.
Bye.